Debbie, this is so fun. I am so excited to have this time with you. I have loved your book, Charlotte and the Quiet Place, for so long. I bought my own copy years ago to find out that this year is the book's 10th anniversary, which is so exciting. So I thought I had to have you on and chat with you because you have so much to share. You have different roles that you play, and I think that all together brings together such a unique experience. So, to get started, I'd love for you to share with us really what got you started. Where did this idea come from more than 10 years ago?
Yes, well, the idea for Charlotte and the Quiet Place came out of a little independent project that I did in my first semester at Lesley University in Cambridge, Mass, in the MFA program. I went back to school late in life, as they say. And as for creative nonfiction, I mostly have written essays and memoir type material. And each student at Lesley is required to take an independent study in a different genre. So for
Mm.
three of the 4 semesters. And I loved that idea. I love the idea of mixed genres. I love the idea of interdisciplinary learning and teaching. So I literally randomly signed up for picture book writing. I thought, well, that might be fun. I had no prior aspirations to write a picture book or be a picture book author. So it was actually ended up being an advantage not to know really anything about the craft of writing picture books. I had been a Montessori toddler teacher for a few years, many years ago. So hanging out with kids and reading to kids is something that felt very lovely and wonderful. But I don't have kids of my own and no grandkids. So I do have a niece and a nephew who I read stories to. But yeah, it was just a class with a mentor, a remote mentor, because it's a low residency program where you're only on campus twice a year. And mostly everything's just long distance learning. So Beth Reisner Glass was my mentor. She wrote Blue Ribbon Dad. I think right now the titles are, but she's
Yeah.
a popular children's book author. Also in the area, she's out in, or was maybe out in Sudbury, Mass. So how do you write a picture book? I just started with the most basic writing instruction, which is to write what you know.
Mm.
It's sort of like you'll think about something from your childhood and maybe because I didn't have anything in mind. The only thing I thought of was the only thing that I did end up having on my mind was that I wondered if there was a way to create a story around a child finding what I called at that time breathing room, a breathing room. Because I was thinking, like, what was my household like growing up? It was kind of noisy and
Mm.
overstimulating. My mother was, on the phone. My father always had the TV and the radio on. My brother is a pianist, so he would be playing the piano. And it's not that I was super introverted or overwhelmed by noise, but I do remember that feeling of, I just want to be in a quiet place. So I
Mm.
thought, and I'm also a long time meditator. I've been
Mm.
meditating since college, which is many years ago. And I thought, what if I'm able to have sort of a story with a literal breathing room where a child's in a noisy house and there's a room that she imagines, or that there's an actual room called the breathing room, or um, the sort of metaphorical use of breathing room where we have to find breathing room in our lives to
Mm.
as a transition between things or just as a timeout from too much stimulation. So that was the original story, is called The Breathing Room. And I just started brainstorming about, well, what's the story? And I learned just very elementary techniques for writing a story in terms of having an arc, where there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and kind of a climax, and then there's a resolution. And in picture books, the child is the protagonist. So the child, in essence, needs to solve the problem and not have an adult solve the problem for them. So that made complete sense to me.
Mm.
So I started to just sketch things out, and pretty quickly I came I came upon the idea of a little girl who's overwhelmed by noise in different places, and she finds a quiet place inside through paying attention to her breathing. So that's where
Mm.
the kind of breathing came back in. Like, okay, so how do I get her to pay attention to her breathing? I thought, well, I what if I had some kind of action where she gets out of breath? So that's where there were various iterations of how she got out of breath, which I won't go into today. But that's
Yeah.
how. So I have in the book, Charlotte has a dog named Otto, and they're walking in the park, and uh, and they spot a squirrel, and Otto breaks leash and takes off. So then they get out of breath chasing after the squirrel.
I love it. I want to highlight a few things you're talking about, Debbie. So for the writers in our community, we have many people who are writing their own stories, especially around yoga and mindfulness. So that's especially helpful for people to understand the process that you so perfectly described. What I love about what you said there is that you're writing now something you're passionate about. And I think that is a good reminder to everybody, right? That if we're writing from our heart, writing from our passion, it will come through in the story. And I love how you talked about your, it was something you came from, not only are you interested in as a grown up, but also a thread that comes from childhood. So often that is the thing that we hear so much from authors. This is the book I wish I had when I was young, you know?
Yes.
And so if you're looking for ideas, how do you look back in your childhood and think about or other children you've been working with over the years, right? And so those ideas. And I love the way you integrated breathing, something so powerful and so simple, into a story to make it
Mm,
relatable. And so I mean, that's
mm.
everything that we do here at Kids Yoga Stories and within children's yoga classes, our community. This is what we do, right? Is we take something that can seem so abstract for a grown-up, say, or whatever, and or mindfulness, and how do we make it into a story? So you're making it relatable to the children. So it's fun, it's creative. I mean, I also listened recently to an interview you did or a conversation, you and the illustrator, Sarah Woolley,
Mm.
because I don't think you had met before in person. And she was sharing how she created these visuals. So powerful to see the a movement. You know, it's beyond the illustrations takes it beyond the story, beyond the
Oh,
text,
yes.
right? And what a beautiful combination to bring these stories alive. And
Oh, yeah.
Debbie, if you knew then, right, 10 years ago, how powerful and meaningful and relevant this story would be now, right? You had no idea.
I had no idea.
It reminds me, have you read the book Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert?
Oh, yes,
Yeah, yeah. I just read
of
that
course.
recently, actually. And I love the story about how she's saying ideas live in the world, whether or not you believe that it doesn't matter,
Mm.
that they live in the world. And she had an idea of a story. Then she ran into Anne Pratchett at a conference, and Elizabeth Gilbert didn't have time to put the story into action. And she met Anne Pratchett at that moment. And then 2 years later, she turns out Anne had written exactly the same story. So they kind of thought that in that interaction of meeting each other, the story idea was transferred to Anne. Like that is
Oh,
mind blowing. So I kind of feel
crazy.
like the way you describe this story, it's almost like you were given this kind of download. You were given this story to be written, to be published. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And now here we are. Yes. So here we are. Tell us a little bit about, wow, Quiet Place is exactly what we're all talking about right now.
What we're talking about now, yeah. I mean, it's always been, I think, important and important to me personally,
Mhm.
certainly as a meditator, to just have quiet, but literal quiet in terms of turning down the volume of external
Mhm.
noise, but also that the deeper quiet that we can access by lowering the volume in the outside world. I think it's a very abstract idea, which I'm sure
Mhm.
you get. Um, And that was something that I actually, a couple of my readers very early on were concerned about. Would kids really get it that you're not talking about a quiet place where there's no noise? You're talking about this deeper level of inner quiet. And so that was both my challenge and my joy to discover words to express that. I knew that I knew, if that makes sense. I knew when I started out and found this idea of maybe she finds a quiet place inside. I knew that there was going to be a way that I could express that in words. And
Mm.
I have lots of notes, and I do a slideshow where I show my notes and my scribbles and how I got there, and just brainstorming all over the place. It's not like I sat down and it all came out. I
Of
had
course. Yeah.
a lot of trial and error, but it was something about the deeper level of quiet that was beyond this external noise. So in the book, there's that sequence where she's the breathing, it sounds like hoo ah of the breathing sounds, and the sounds slow down and things get quieter and quieter. And then there's that moment of it was quiet at last. It was so quiet that Charlotte noticed an even quieter place. And I mean, that was like my my turning point where I needed to, how am I going to say this, an even quieter place. And so I found, you know, I've memorized it and read it 1,000 times, but can I recall right now? No, but let me, I'll just find, if that's okay, to
Yes.
just find that little sequence. They breathe in and out, they sit down, her mind slows down, it is quiet at last. It is so quiet that Charlotte notices an even quieter place, a place deep in her belly where her breath is soft and even. A place, I mean, just right there, I could go off on a place deep in her mind where her thoughts are hushed and low. A place as quiet as the small silence on the very last page of her favorite book, the silence right after the end. And that just came out. That whole sequence, I can just say that was fed to me from something above. I mean, I knew that I wanted to communicate that deeper level. I didn't know how. And once I found that little way in, that ending thing about the book and everything, that's my favorite part of the book. And a lot of people tell me it's theirs as well. So I don't think it's a matter of our times necessarily. I mean, yes, there's all the more reason now because of so many stresses of so many adults and families right now. But there have always been challenges, I think, too, as you know, I mean, emotional regulation and making the mind body connection and being able to attend to the structures of school that are very difficult for some kids to attend to. And where do you go? You can't be always reacting to what's going on, all the stimuli in our world, good and bad, or I won't say good and bad, but positive and negative. So just to seed the idea that children have the power inside them already, it's not something that we necessarily, even as adults, can just learn in a verbal, sort of intellectual way. It's something that I believe everyone could feel. And again, people said to me in the beginning, it's super abstract. Kids aren't going to get it. Once I started to do readings at bookstores and classrooms, this is, mostly 10, 12 years ago when the book first came out. I mean, the kids got it by experiencing it, but they could also articulate when I'd say, how many people felt a quiet place inside or that kind of thing. And the hands would go up, and some kids are like, I felt it in my brain. I felt it in my chest. I felt it, in what do one girl say? In her belly, like Charlotte. A lot of kids are very, the younger ones are more concrete, like, yeah, my quiet place is under a tree. My quiet place is in my bed. with my teddy bear, that kind of thing. And
Mm.
I never say, oh, but I really mean a deeper quiet place. It's just like, that's wonderful. I'm so glad you have a quiet place.
Yeah.
Because we have to create that quiet in order to even have a shot. And so for us too.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that about that it is abstract and you had some folks possibly concerned about whether children would get it. And I always believe in the power of story, right? And that's where you and I connect so well. That this is I'm obsessed with picture books and the tool that it provides for
Yeah.
children to have these conversations. It's extraordinary. And I can imagine on your website, I was looking at some of the videos and pictures that you had of speaking with, I'm sure, libraries and schools and homes and things. And what other kinds of reactions? Did you have any other stories from people of how what they got from the book that sort of surprised you maybe, or that were ones that
Yeah.
stayed in your heart?
Oh, they all stay in my heart. I have to say, it's really fun. It's fun to read reviews online. It's fun to get letters out of the blue from all over the world of people just saying, "This is my child's favorite book. It helps her go to sleep at night," or
Mm,
or I read this to infants. I had someone ordered a book recently and said, "Oh, but she's only 18 months old. She's not gonna, I'll have to put it aside." I said, "Oh, I would really encourage you to start reading it now." I mean, of course, reading picture books to 18 months old makes sense to me,
yeah.
but the children don't have to understand the words to Charlotte because the
Mm,
whole mood is within the words, all the sounds and
mm,
the rhymes and the alliteration and the buzzes, blusters and hums, the sounds
mm,
themselves kind of create a mood. And then when everything slows down, from what I hear, people just tell me that they relax, the kid relax, they want to hear it again, they want to go over and over, they want to, they follow Otto a lot, the
mm.
dog. They sort of, because Otto also calms down in the book. If you watch the interview with Sarah, I think we talked about that because in the early drafts, Otto was all overstimulated through the whole book, and I said I would love to see that Otto also finds a quiet place inside, plus the squirrel he's chasing. So these are little things. And the best, well, two things. One is when I do school visits in the classroom, I'll show you. I mean, I know you have many people who use the Hoberman sphere.
Yes.
So,
Right.
this is the easiest way to get a quiet room is just say, okay, breathe in and out with me. Like, okay. or And the squirmiest classrooms, even in an entire assembly of all grades, it's just silence. And the teachers who usually are sort of standing around the perimeter, they're like, they can't believe that a simple, and those who aren't already teaching. I mean, so many people now are
Mm.
teaching mindfulness in schools. So it used to be a little bit more um, of a, of a surprise or what's the word I'm
Yes.
looking for?
Yeah.
Of
Yeah. It
a
was
new thing.
yeah.
Um, so sometimes after we do that, and I'll do listening as well, I have like, the chimes that I'll chime, but it's not
Mm.
just because kids have the chime in the classroom where it's like, quiet down, everybody, and the teacher will, I don't know what will happen on Zoom, but does
Right.
it reverberate? Oops,
It
my cat
doesn't,
just
but
freaked
yes.
out.
Yeah.
Um, sorry, Lenny, my cat. But I have them listen to the sound until it dissipates. So it's a really wonderful listening exercise. I think maybe many people do. And then raise your hand when you think the sound is over. And the kids in the front um, are the last because the kids in the back, the sound is gone by the time. And and I ask them what they notice. So that's the way into finding our quiet place, I think, is just to practice noticing skills. So what did you notice in your body? And like I said before, oh, I noticed my mind, I felt calmer, or I noticed my chest going in and out. And they're able, even the youngsters, really the young ones. I think I have a video on my website, the Charlotte website, with 5-year-olds, a kindergarten class, where they just talk about how they notice that their thoughts settle down or something, maybe not those words.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is, I, I printed out a review that made me really happy from Amazon, if I could find it. Because these are the things that authors, and I had no idea. I didn't know. I just wrote my little story. My mentor said, "This is good. You should submit it." I said, "Okay, I'll try." And then here we are, 10 years later. It's crazy. I mean, won, a bunch of awards and things like that. So it speaks something is out
Yeah,
there that
right.
people are hungry for. I know that. I knew that. I just knew it inside myself. So one mom said, "My 2-year-old book-loving son literally went from slightly hyper to head laying on my lap relaxed in one read and asked to hear it again. Amazing. My 2-month-old fell asleep listening to it be read." And then she has to the whoever's reading the review, "Don't forget to read aloud the breathing in and out. Ooh, ah. We love this book." So, I mean, so it's ridiculously gratifying.
Yeah,
And that's
right.
the main feedback I get, is that it's a bedtime thing where um, their kids love it, and where everyone relaxes.
Mm.
Um,
From your
yeah.
experience as your own meditation experience, and you're a therapist, from what I understand, right, with grown-ups, what would you say, what have you recommended to folks, both children and grown-ups, of what are some tips to how do we find that quiet? You were giving some examples for children, the Hoberman sphere and the chime, but do you sort of have a few tips in your toolkit of how to help people find their own quiet?
Well, I did mention those things that I do in the classroom. I mean, I'm at a disadvantage in some ways to some of the people that you hang out with in your world, because I don't teach in the classroom. I'm not around kids every day. So I don't consider myself a mindfulness teacher for kids. So a lot of it is drawing on my own experience and using some of the tools that the teachers do use in the classroom. But to me, the whole thing that feels the most important to all of this is learning to, or maybe having a grown up, tell, invite us to just notice what's going on. The simplest definition of mindfulness is to notice what's happening in the present moment without judgment and with compassion. I think maybe that's adapted from John Kabat-Zinn or Amy Saltzman, who wrote some wonderful work. But it works. I believe that the idea of noticing through our senses, and with yoga, I mean, it's not just a cognitive experience with connecting to our bodies in a mindful way, to be able to experience, to even notice, is my chest going up and down? What is my breath catching at certain points? And be able to, if we don't notice that inside, if we're not able to notice that inside ourselves as adults, I think it's much, much harder. I wouldn't say impossible, but it makes it that much harder to help our kids um, slow down, find, notice enough to be able to find or experience, I wouldn't even say find, just experience some inner silence, some inner peace. It doesn't have to be transcendent in a meditation type way.
Mm.
But kids, a lot of kids draw their quiet place. They're asked, I have these forms where it's like, draw your quiet place and write some words about it, or draw your noisy place and write some words about that. It's actually and draw your noisy place. So I thought I would share with you, a couple of things from, I mean, I actually didn't select them, but this is from the same kindergarten class I was talking about. So they just drew a picture of their quiet place. Kylie's quiet place is in her bed in her room.
And Debbie's showing, for those of us
Oh,
listening on audio. So
oh,
Debbie's
sorry.
showing a little packet of of papers that was submitted probably from the teacher that's written a sentence at the bottom saying the student's name and where they find the quiet place. And then the student has drawn a picture and colored it in. So this is a great activity, for example, after reading this story in your children's yoga classes or in your classrooms or at your clinic or whatever, or studio. What a great way to give everyone a piece of paper, right? And you can either help them if they're really young or they can write it themselves and for them to just
Oh
what a
yeah.
great way
Well,
to explore
they
it.
say the young
Yeah.
ones, you can see
Yeah.
these kids aren't writing. But
Yeah.
apropos of a yoga studio, I just turned the page and this is what we find. Let's see. Maybe you can read it because it's backwards for
Is it
me.
Jilly or Ellie's
Oh,
quiet
I think
places
it's
in
Lily.
Lily's
Lily.
quiet places in her mom's yoga studio, doing crisscross applesauce and putting
And
her head out and her eyes
putting
closed.
her head out with her eyes closed.
Oh, her
Oh,
mom's got a yoga studio. Well, that just goes to show, right? I was thinking about what you're talking about is that for children to find their quiet place, what you're talking about is for us as grown-ups to model that. So you're talking about noticing, right? It's something that we can hear over and over and over again. This is not anything new, right? We know from the research from John Kabat-Zinn, we talk about this in our community, and everybody's out there in the world knows about mindfulness, the basics, but it's something to come back to again and again is noticing, listening to our body, listening to our minds, our emotions, and modeling that for our children, right? And so seeing, like I've been on my own journey recently, even though we've been doing this forever, it
mm,
evolves over time and you have different things going on in your life, right? And so right now I'm making a relationship with perimenopause, shall I say? Having a relationship. And so I've noticed that my body is, I have indigestion. And so I need to slow down in my eating,
mm,
things like that, that I always knew I needed to have mindful eating in my life, but it never came up until now. And so
yeah.
I just talk to my daughter. I light a little candle and I sit and I try really hard to eat by myself without any distractions and all that kind of thing. But it's in sharing these stories and these experiences with our students. So it's not like you have to go buy a bunch of things or go and pretend. It's just about being authentic. So as you read
Authentic.
the
Yes.
story, is sharing with your students or your children, this is what my quiet place is right now. I was telling you, I
Exactly.
just went to a silent retreat. And so I've got a whole bunch of practices that I hadn't explored before, right? And so I'm sharing those. And that's
Yes.
where we can help. That's a gateway in which to help our children find it by
Yes.
modeling ourselves, by doing it. It has to come from us first, right?
Absolutely. That feels like the most important piece of all of this. And also, I mean, even to add to the modeling part is to actively practice. I mean, I really do believe in a formal mindfulness practice can make things rather than um, uh, doing it in a haphazard way or doing it in reaction to something like a lot of people sort of, well, my emotions are dysregulated. I better practice my mindfulness stuff. I, I'm not alone. I mean, the Buddha or whatever. This is what mindfulness is and always was to have a regular practice so that, I know many of your people that you've interviewed talk about the default network in the brain, where if we carve out the pathway where quiet and silence and calm, calm in mind and body is the default, is
Mm.
that becomes then the that that's it's just more accessible. It's not like we don't react. It's just that we have a way in without on a regular basis. So I'm not sure I said that in the
Yeah,
best
no, I
way,
couldn't
but
agree more. A few minutes every day, as the Dalai Lama said, is always better than like an hour on the weekend, right? And
yeah.
it's definitely
So
something I've heard over the years when we send out, surveys to our community and check in with people. Number of people have said, which no blame or shame, it is what it is. But people have this idea, oh, I don't have time right now, but I'll try
yeah,
it when I'm on Christmas vacation or something or a holiday
right.
vacation. And you think, oh, you just want to go, you want to have a phone call with this person or chat and say, oh, it just can be a little few minutes here and there is much more powerful because then it'll be there for you in your
Yes.
toolkit when things get hard, right?
Exactly. I just set that up with a clinical client yesterday who is under a lot of stress, has one kid on the way, a full-time job. Their
Mm.
spouse has a full-time job. Their house is undergoing renovations. I mean, just intense stress, not to mention what's going on in the world, which is stressful. And I said, I think it's time. You know, so that person will listen to the Insight Timer from time to time and just loves 6 or 7 minute video or audio that they found. And I said, well, 6 or 7. He said, well, I was trying to not to go gender, but he said that it was too long. You know, he didn't think that he'd be able to find 6 or 7 minutes on a regular basis. I said, that's fine, whatever works, you know, just even 3 minutes. So, but to make a plan. So when he arrives in the parking lot at work, set the timer for 3 minutes. That's your time. Can you commit to that?
Mm.
Or have a mindful shower. It doesn't have to be being quiet. It's just in the shower. Pay attention to actually what's going on in the shower, or doing the dishes, or that kind of thing for grown-ups. And also, just doesn't have to be. It could be, you could be moving. You could, as you know, I mean, you could take a mindful walk and leave your phone at home and just notice all the grounding exercises, like noticing everything red in your neighborhood. I did that during COVID myself because we were all so freaked out. As I recall, in the very early days, I didn't even want to go outside. I was so afraid of catching COVID if I passed someone on the street, but we had to get out. So I remember just feeling this intense level of anxiety, so that I would do the good old grounding exercise and say, okay, like, I'm going to just look for everything red. There's a fire hydrant, there's a door, there's a window, and just allowing my brain to focus. So it doesn't have to be breathing exercises, as you well know,
Mm. I
and
love it.
lots of options. But it is about um, the noticing and the practicing, and also the intention. I
I
know adults who are all struggling right now
mm.
to find calm places, whether even through art. A friend is doing a drawing every day and she's finding it really meditative, and she's not a meditator. So
Yeah,
it's
it's
like,
about
good.
finding, yes, I love that. I love the variety, right? That we can be creative and unique to us. What fills our bucket, right? And that can change over
Exactly.
time as well, right? Oh,
Yeah. And
beautiful.
sitting,
Congratulations. Yeah, go ahead.
oh, just one more thing. I know just to say, sitting in silence is not for everyone.
Mm,
Especially people with ADD, there's something happens where it's like, this is, all the bells go off. It's very agitating in many ways. So silence isn't always the answer either. So I guess that's just another point I want to make sure to get in is, it's not, we don't empty our minds and all of a sudden we have no thoughts. But some people are not comfortable having this constant stream of thoughts that come up when we do stop and close our eyes, let's say. So having an external focus is really a wonderful way to find a quiet place inside as well.
right. Yeah, I love that so much. That's what I was telling you about my silent retreat. One of the things I learned so profoundly is just the way we can get into silence, in that it doesn't have to be sitting cross-legged. I'm such a traditionalist, and I think with
Oh,
yoga, I think about
wow.
that. And so just standing, or as you say, walking, or laying down, there's a lot of ways, or you could be, your quiet place could be doodling, it could be
Yeah.
painting, it could be gardening, so you can be
Oh, yeah.
doing something with your hands. You can, there's lots of different ways. And I think that's the powerful of it. It's not just about sitting cross-legged on top of a mountain, or
Exactly.
for an hour every morning. You have to make it jam into your life. And even like in the Charlotte in the Quiet Place, even having a space, a safe place that where you can go to have your space is so powerful. So congratulations. This is such a huge accomplishment for a book to still be alive and well, and it has its own energy and its own life for people around the world. So how can we join you on this journey? How can we connect with you as you celebrate this milestone with Charlotte and the
Oh,
Quiet Place?
thanks, Giselle. It's so lovely to be with you, and it feels like you sort of you have just so recently had this amazing experience of getting out of your comfort zone, so to speak, with your own practice and expanding it. It's very inspiring. I have several different websites, but I have Charlotte and thequietplace.com. There's a lot going on there right now. I'm trying to keep it up to date. There's ways that people can contact me through there. I'm available to do in school visits within the Boston area pretty much, and or virtually beyond the greater Boston area. Sometimes I travel, but not so much anymore. And I have a talk that I give about the making of a picture book
Mm.
from concept to completion. So that's something that I've offered different audiences over the years. And for people, I don't know when this will air, but on October 14th at the Newton Community Ed in Newton, Mass, at the Newton South High School, I'm giving a talk called Helping Children Find Their Quiet Place, or something like that. And I'll be presenting Charlotte and talking about some of the things we talked about today. It's for adults. There's a whole series with Sharon Salzberg and Chris Willard and other people. So I'm excited
Lovely.
about offering that. And I'm very easily reached at Deborah Sosin at gmail.com. And I'm just so thrilled to be here. And this is my favorite thing to talk about. And it's really exciting. And I do want to give a big shout out to Parallax Press, my publisher, and Sarah Gomez Woolley, who brought Charlotte to life. I mean,
Yes.
she was just a little idea in my head, and now she's a character.
I love it. Thank you so much. Congratulations. And please keep in touch, Debbie. We adore your work and we're along for the journey. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you so much. Take care.